And this is going to affect absolutely everything from how we define and understand IP and copyright. So once you create a piece of content and you put it out there, but now it can have notes added by the reader, and they can share those notes with other people. What is the copyright in the new piece of material that gets shared? So copyright law has a lot to deal with there. It's going to completely redefine how we see our relationship with the consumer. I think as publishers we have had a very distant relationship with the consumer, and we're starting to work out ways to have a much closer relationship with the consumer, and that's going to be absolutely key, because if you think about those 4 C's, it's all about the relationship and the points between publisher, author and reader. So that's a quick summary of what I'm talking about. To talk about the 3 key themes, I'm speaking very fast, and I apologise for trying to be quick. I can see you. So the themes. I think number 1 is the transformation of channels. Number 2 is the evolution of marketing. And number 3 is the impact of globalisation, which is caused by the internet. So I'm going to just address some of the headline thoughts on this, and the rest of the speakers over the next 2 days I think will be drawing out some of these themes, so I'm very much just trying to give you an overview. So talking about the transformation of channels, how are we going to embrace a completely brand new supply chain? The growth in online book selling overall, and particularly this spectacular growth in e-book sales, which is, albeit from a 0 base, just going so up a cliff like that in the UK and the US, and it's going to happen here as well. So those 2 things combined are, I'm afraid to say, going to spell the demise of many bricks and mortar channels. And the new, most dominant channels have really spell a sea change in the shape and philosophy of our key routes to market. Of course, we're talking about Google, we're talking about Apple, we're talking about Amazon, we're talking about a few other players as well, but they're the 3 key ones. And I think it's useful to think about some of the key features that define these people. So they're, first of all, online-only businesses. Very different from what we're used to. They're absolutely 150% consumer-focused. They know so much about the consumer because they have that direct interface with them, and they have analytics, and they're technology companies, so they just gather and eat and spew out data about the consumer, and they use that. They're very young companies. Google and Amazon, I think, are both less than 15 years old. I'm not sure if I've got that completely right, but they're very young companies. Apple is a bit older, but it's young, current formation. They operate at scale, so they don't really think about niche or niches. They operate at what helps them to do what they do is their immense scale and their global size. So they're about dominating the web. And what they do is they use data and analytics in order to segment customers within that enormous scale. They're global, as I said. They're platform builders. Their devices are absolutely secondary to Amazon and Google. Really, it's actually about building the platform. Less so Apple. They are about devices, but it's the interplay between the 2 that makes their devices successful. And they move quite unpredictably, and they move at pace. So they have the capacity for long-term vision that, again, publishers sometimes don't have, that we talk about the next 2 to 3 years maybe at the most, and in digital the foreseeable future I'd say is probably less than 6 months. What does this mean for us? So if our bricks and mortar channels to market are severely dented over the next, let's say, 5 years, what will happen to us, and how will we handle that? Well, one of the things we'll have to get used to is that hand selling of the physical book by a passionate enthusiast in a place will reduce, and it will reduce quite substantially potentially over time, unless these kinds of booksellers find new ways to meet with their consumers. So that expert on the spot recommendation will reduce. And what's going to replace it? Well, at the moment, what's replacing it is algorithmically produced recommendations or social recommendations. So there's some really simple, straightforward things this means for us. So to get down to some practical stuff. our metadata that goes with our books has to be absolutely complete, it has to be accurate, and it has to be a lot richer. So at the moment we think we should, send out the price and the ISBN and a couple of other bits of interesting information, but it needs to have blurbs, it needs to have reviews, it needs to have recommendation links, it needs to really speak about the book, almost like an enthusiast would speak about the book, but it needs to be in the data. So that's going to be quite different for us all, I think. Search engine optimization, it's got to be part of our holistic strategy as businesses, but it's also got to be part of our book-by-book campaign strategy. Actually, Peter was literally just saying to me earlier while we were having coffee that at Digital Book World, I think 3 people put their hands up in the whole conference when they were asked whether they had a search strategy. So we can see we're pretty far off on that. Covers, book covers. What will a cover be? A cover won't be a cover. A cover will be a logo or an image or an icon. And already at Pan Macmillan, for example, we look at all our covers as images this size in order to judge how we're going to make them work in the digital channel. So we have to imagine that people might be looking at them on here and it's a small app-sized icon. Sort of viral digital marketing assets, and the online pre-awareness is going to be vital. And social media strategy becomes vital as well. And I know that other people are going to talk about these things in detail, so I'm just kind of giving you a shopping list at the moment. So we need to think and move a lot more quickly to bring our ways of working into alignment with these big, new, global, powerful, and now key customers of ours. Really, we kind of have to start behaving a little bit like them. And we need to get closer to consumers ourselves in order to maintain that value that we offer to authors. If we're going to offer authors a service, effectively, we need to be able to do for them all of this stuff. We need to be able to do it very professionally and efficiently. That's about the transformation of channels. My second theme, how will book marketing evolve? Well, this is a kind of duh moment, but it will move increasingly online. Where marketing does remain in more traditional media, so from broadcast to outside to print media and so on, digital features are going to become included in all of these areas. So digital elements such as QR codes or digital tagging, calls to action online, call-outs for digital channels will all become part of the campaign, and they are becoming part of the campaign where I work. How will book marketing evolve? It will be affected by the decrease in physical books just out there on the street and in shop windows, in people's hands on the tube or the train. If they're holding a device, there's no book jacket, so there's no kind of just looking like that interestedly across the compartment in the train and thinking, oh, I think I fancy reading that. How's that going to be replaced? What will replace that serendipity of just walking past a shop window and seeing something in the window? The serendipity of browsing in a shop, where I think the browsing experience online is definitely not as good as the physical browsing experience, and that's a huge issue, I think. Whoever solves that one will come and see me straight away. Mobile, not important for ebook sales, very important for marketing. It becomes particularly key because of the way that, if you think about the way the rest of the world operates and the way the rest of the world sells stuff, the rest of the world outside of publishing already sells stuff in a very sort of localised, customised way around your mobile experience. I think that book publishers have got a lot of work to do there. I think that we will move away from, in trade publishing in particular, publishers tend to think book by book, campaign by campaign, short term, short term, short term, short term. And I think we're going to move away, see a trend moving away from book by book campaigns to much broader, much deeper, ongoing strategies, including online community building and brand building, so that you're not just living or dying by the next book. We're going to have businesses that can have a longer term vision of that. And in general, there's just going to be a greater focus on developing and communicating brands, because really that's where, in the cross-media landscape, that's what works. The next theme for me, as I said, was the impact of globalization caused by the net. So what is the impact, and how do we deal with it? Well, in a way, I don't want to sound like I'm trying to be frightening, but it's a potential crisis for localised pricing, for publication timings. At the moment we sell rights, all around the world, and different people publish the book at different times, at different prices. There is genuinely, right now, a potential crisis there. There is a crisis there. The issue is, how do we continue to support localised specialist publishing businesses who can publish for that market, as well as kind of buying the foreign imports, as it were. And if it's not managed effectively, particularly by the global publishers, this is going to cause huge issues. So managing our it goes back to data again, which is very boring, but managing our territorial data is absolutely critical. Ensuring actually that we're as groups supporting our local publishing entities, and that they handle promotions and sales back through for the books in their areas. Thinking more and more about things like global release dates. All of these things are going to be key. Global marketing campaigns are going to be key. And another issue to do with globalisation, or a sort of tangent to globalisation, is the impact of piracy, which will start to bite a lot harder as the markets globalise. And we believe very much where I work that a kind of stick and carrot approach is required for this. So there's going to need to be coordination by publishers around the globe, where we actually effectively we don't co-own, someone has the head contract or whatever, but basically we co-own sets of rights around the globe. If that book is being pirated somewhere, who's going to deal with it? Does it really matter whose edition it is? But the stick and carrot thing that I'm talking about, at Macmillan we have an anti-piracy officer, and they work on both sides of that coin. And in the digital departments, what we think about a lot is how do we work with the channels, and how do we work ourselves to get as much legitimate digital products out there at fair prices that will hopefully allay the casual piracy element. You're never going to get rid of the serious piracy. So those are my 3 themes. I'm sorry it's such a quick overview. I hope that's given you a few sort of opening positioning statements and some practical thoughts about what we have to do. I think the themes I've touched on will be expanded as we go through the day and tomorrow. And I'm going to look forward to talking to you all a lot more as well between the sessions. If you have any questions, then feel free to come and see me.
Thank you very much, Sarah.